The Draugr Plague, The Salt Rite. Season 1, Episode 9. The boat had reached land, and the dead had kept their hold. That was the first law the islet taught them. No one slept after Freya saw the fingers beneath the keel. The children had been gathered behind the black ridge of stone, wrapped in wet wool and smoke-stained cloaks, but even their exhausted bodies knew the shape of danger. They lifted their heads when the hull creaked. The wounded opened eyes that pain had almost closed. Men who had fallen to their knees after landing rose again with knives in their hands, though knives had never been enough against what waited under ice. Freya crouched beside the last boat with one hand on the gunwale and the other around her blade. The keel rested half on stone, half in frozen wash. Ice had sealed around the underside where the dead hands clung. Pale fingers curled up from beneath, locked into cracks and seams, some broken, some whole, some small enough to make the watchers stop breathing. Ulfric knelt beside her. He did not say to cut them away. He had ordered enough cutting since dawn to know when a knife was only an answer for the hand, and not the thing that had taught the hand to grip. Leif stood behind them, his throat raw from song. One carved oar leaned against his shoulder. Roof, wave, flame, and path were dark under salt water. The oar had carried memory out of the burned hall. It had carried rhythm across the fjord. Now it looked like a witness brought to court before there was any law to hear it. Astrid came down the stones slowly. Someone tried to guide her. She shook the hand away. "Let me hear where the water is," she said. The person stepped back. She stopped near the stern, blindfold turned toward the keel. The empty salt bowl rested in both of her hands. It had become a cruel object by then. Everyone knew it was empty. Everyone looked at it anyway, the way hungry people looked at a closed door. "Are they moving?" Ulfric asked. Freya watched the fingers. "No." "Are they dead?" She looked at him then. "You want a word that makes them easier?" "No. I want to know whether they will drag the boat back." Astrid lowered the bowl until its rim touched the frozen plank. The sound was small and hard. "They already have," she said. The people nearest them shifted. A man spat into the dark water. An old woman made a sign against rising dead and then hid the hand that made it, as if even a sign might be bait. Ulfric stood. "Speak plainly." Astrid turned her face toward the gathered survivors. "The boat is on stone. Still the hands hold it. The skiff is gone. Still what was hidden in it follows us in grief. The longhouse burned. Still smoke sits in our clothes. The mother sank. Still her child reaches back when he dreams." Soren, sitting among the children, looked down at his hands. Freya saw him and said nothing. Words could make a wound proud of itself. Astrid continued, "We have cut rope. We have rowed. We have burned wood. We have thrown gold to water. Each saved us for a breath. None taught us how to live after the breath." A man near the ridge said, "Then cut the fingers and be done." "Cut them," Astrid said. "And tomorrow someone ties a child with rope and calls it kindness. Someone hides gold and calls it memory. Someone carries a bone and calls it love. Someone keeps a name silent because grief is easier without witnesses. Then the dead will find another keel." The man's mouth closed. A wounded woman asked, "What do you want from us?" Astrid lifted the empty bowl. "Not want. Law." The word moved through them colder than wind. They had lived by custom before. Custom had told them how to seat elders, how to divide fish, how to honor pyres, how to keep a hall, how to greet a bride, how to settle blood before blood became feud. Custom had been a roof. The roof was smoke. Law would have to be colder than custom, harder than comfort, and ugly enough to be obeyed when love begged against it. Ulfric looked from Astrid to the boat. What law? Bodies burned before names are forgotten. Memory salted before greed feeds on it. Names spoken correctly before longing twists them into hooks. Gold refused. Hidden objects surrendered. Ropes watched. The dead not called back for comfort. The living not permitted to carry what will drown the clan. Freya's jaw tightened. She heard the rope before she heard the law. She felt Soren's hands clawing at her wrist. She saw the cut end vanish beneath the ice. A man laughed once, without mirth. "With what salt?" Astrid turned toward him. "With too little. That is why it must be law." Ulfric looked at the frozen hands. The fingers remained locked beneath the keel, quiet as vows. "We need fire," he said. "We need witnesses first," Astrid said. "Fire without witness is hunger with smoke. Right without obedience is noise." The old woman with empty hands from the lost skiff stepped forward. My wife's bowl sank. The words made others look toward the place where the skiff had gone down, though the islet blocked the water from view. They did not need to see it. They saw the sunken things in one another's faces, the repair tools that would have mended cracked ribs, the meal that might have stretched through another storm, the small carved horse, the cradle, the belt, the hidden pieces of home that had seemed harmless because they were not gold. The skiff had become a grave for useful things and beloved things alike. That was why the law had to name both. "I know," Astrid said. "You would have me salt that memory too." "Yes." "With what?" "With truth. With the name spoken. With no hand reaching after the bowl when the dead pull." The old woman stared at her, then at Ulfric, then at the boat. "That is poor comfort." "It is not comfort," Astrid said. "It is offense." The word held. Wind moved across the islet. The sea beyond the landing was empty, black under the dimming sky. No warden stone glowed, no hall stood behind them. No skiff waited with extra food. The survivors had stone under their feet and dead hands under their keel. Ulfric pointed to the ridge above the water. "Bring what salt remains. Bring ash from every cloak that carries the longhouse. Bring the names of the dead and the names of what was lost. Bring those who saw the hands. No one stays away because grief makes them tired." Astrid did not nod. She only turned back to the keel. "Leave the hands for now," she said. Freya looked at her. "They stay there. They teach better than I do." So the frozen hands remained under the keel, while Astrid asked for salt, ash, names, and witnesses, and the living climbed the stones to make a law in the dark. They made the first court of the new law on bare stone. There was no high seat. There was no fire large enough to warm the living. The fuel gathered for the rite was shamefully small. Splinters from cracked boat ribs, strips shaved from a broken oarlog, dry threads teased from rope ends, and one little twist of pitch scraped from a seam that would need patching before morning. Every piece had another use. Every use accused the rite of theft. Astrid sat on a flat black rock with the empty bowl before her. Around it lay what the clan still had: a pouch of salt, smaller than a fist, a rag dark with ash from the burned longhouse, Leif's knife, Ulfric's axe, Freya's spear, and a coil of rope cut into short lengths so no loop looked innocent. The survivors gathered in a broken half-circle. They did not stand by rank. Wet, hunger, and fear had made rank difficult to see. An old woman leaned against a warrior. A child slept against a stranger's knee. A man who had cursed Ulfric for sinking the skiff stood beside Ulfric, now because there was nowhere else for either of them to stand. Astrid placed her hand over the salt pouch. "This is not enough," she said. No one answered. "If you need a lie before the rite begins, leave now." I have none. A few faces hardened, more faces lowered. This salt will not save everybody. This fire will not make the sea holy. These words will not bind the dead as rope binds a calf. The warden stones are dead behind us. The hall is ash. The skiff is under black water. The hands still grip the keel. Soren flinched at hands. Freya saw. Astrid did not soften. The rite is not a cure, Astrid said. It is a fence. A fence can be crossed. A fence can rot. A fence can be ignored by a fool. But without it, every foot wanders until the dark chooses for us. She untied the salt pouch. The grains inside looked few enough to count, though no one spoke a number. Astrid pinched some between finger and thumb, then stopped with her hand raised. First law: burn the body when fire can be found. If fire cannot be found, guard the body, name the body, and set it apart until fire comes. No body is left hidden under snow because grief is tired. No kin keeps a hand, a tooth, a braid, or a bone for comfort. The dead are not divided into keepsakes. A mother made a choking sound. Astrid heard it. If you love them, do not make them small enough to carry. The mother covered her mouth. Astrid dropped salt onto the ash rag. Second law: salt the memory. Not the whole memory. No salt is deep enough for that. Salt the thing that calls you backward. A bowl, a belt, a name spoken only in sleep, a place in the hall, a debt, a shame. Speak what it is. Touch ash. Let the clan witness that it is memory, not cargo. The old woman with the lost bowl stepped forward before courage could leave her. "Yrsa," she said. Her wife's name entered the cold air. It did not warm it. The blue-rimmed bowl was hers, the woman said. It sank with the skiff. I hated Ulfric when it went. I still do. Ulfric bowed his head, not in pardon. In receipt. Astrid held out the ash rag. The old woman pressed 2 fingers to it. Astrid touched those fingers with salt. "Yrsa is named," Astrid said. "The bowl is memory." "The bowl is not a road." The old woman repeated it. Her voice broke on road, but the word came. Others followed because one wound had made a path. A boy named the wooden horse lost with the skiff. A wounded man named his brother's knife, not because it was gold, but because he had wanted to hide it under his coat. A young woman named the shore behind them, and admitted she had planned to walk back at dawn if no one watched her. Freya's eyes moved to her, and stayed until the woman looked away. "Third law," Astrid said. "Speak the name correctly, not as bait, not as command, not as bargaining. Not into the water, not into the ice. Speak the name before witnesses, so the living carry truth and the dead are not called back to finish our loneliness." Soren began to shake. Freya stepped toward him. Astrid lifted a hand to stop her. "He may choose silence tonight," Astrid said. "Law is not a hook either." Freya stopped. Soren looked at her as if permission hurt worse than command. "Fourth law," Astrid said. "Gold is refused, not weighed, not hidden, not saved for children, not kept for dowry, luck, trade, oath, honor, or memory. If gold is found, it is named before all, salted if salt remains, and cast from the camp under watch. The one who hides it has opened a door." The half-circle changed. People looked at neighbors, packs, sleeves, hems. Shame moved faster than wind. Fifth law: ropes are watched. No child tied without a living hand awake beside the knot. No trailing line left to water. No cargo lashed so dear that a boat follows it under. Every rope is mercy, only while the living govern it. Freya looked down at the cut lengths on the stone. The fibers seemed almost alive in the fireless dark. Sixth law. The dead are not called back through longing. You may grieve, you may curse, you may speak names before witnesses, but no one leans over dark water and asks the dead to answer. If a voice answers, wake the camp. If a hand rises, do not ask whose hand before you guard the living. A man whispered, "This is hard." Astrid turned toward him. Soft law fed the fjord. No one spoke after that. Ulfric struck sparks from his knife against a stone. The little fuel caught poorly, smoked, and tried to die. Freya shielded it with her cloak until a thin flame stood. It was not enough for warmth. It was enough for witness. Astrid passed ash from hand to hand. Not much. A smear. A mark. She touched salt to tongues only when someone had spoken a true name or a true attachment. Many received ash on their palms instead, because salt was too scarce for comfort. No one protested. The lack was part of the law. "Say it," Astrid said. The first answer was ragged. "Burn the body," they said. Again. "Burn the body. Salt the memory. Salt the memory. Speak the name. Speak the name. Refuse the gold. Refuse the gold. Watch the rope. Watch the rope. Do not call the dead back." That line came weakest. Astrid waited. The sea knocked under the keel below them. They said it again. "Do not call the dead back." This time the words held together. The covenant did not comfort them. It made the night more exact. It gave shame a shape, grief a boundary, and fear a task. People stood with ash on their hands and salt near their tongues, understanding that the Rite was not a shelter from winter. A few looked almost disappointed by that. Astrid saw it and would not let disappointment become false hope. "If you wake warmer tomorrow, thank the bodies beside you, not this ash," she said. "If the dead stay beneath the water, thank the watch, not the words alone. The Rite is the work remembered. Without the work, it is breath in cold air." It was the rule for walking through it without opening every door, and for knowing which door each frightened hand most wanted to open wide. Astrid made the law, but law without a hand was only weather. Everyone knew whose hand would be asked to hold it. Ulfric stood beside the small flame while the ash marks dried on palms around him. Smoke crawled low because there was no strength in the fire. It stung eyes already red from salt wind. It made him think of the longhouse again, not as a hall now, but as a roof he had ordered into ruin so his people would not turn back. He thought of the skiff sinking with meal and tools. He thought of the woman's slap on his cheek. He thought of the frozen hands below the keel. Every hard choice had kept someone breathing. None had made him worthy of the breath. Astrid turned toward him. "Now swear." The words were simple. They struck like an axe set on a block. Ulfric looked at the gathered survivors. "You have heard the law." A man answered, "We have heard Astrid." "You will hear me now." That quieted them. Freya stood near the outer edge of the half-circle, close enough to step between a child and danger, far enough to watch everyone. Soren sat behind her, wrapped in the torn edge of her cloak. Leif knelt beside a stack of oars and did not carve yet. His knife rested across his knees. He watched Ulfric with the wary attention of a man deciding whether a sentence should be recorded or left to die. Ulfric lifted his right hand. Ash marked the heel of his palm. Salt had not touched his tongue yet. He had waited. Not because he thought himself above the Rite, but because he feared how badly he wanted the oath to cleanse what it could only bind. "I swear to enforce the salt Rite," he said. Astrid's head tilted. Not enough. A few people stirred. Ulfric did not look at her with anger. He had asked her for hard truth too many times to resent it when it arrived. "I swear to enforce it without favor," he said. The islet seemed to listen. "Say who is not spared," Astrid said. Ulfric's hand lowered a little. There it was, the wound inside the oath. A leader could swear to law and let everyone imagine the exceptions. The old, the young, the useful, the beloved, the dangerous, the ones whose loss would break him. A false oath left room for mercy to disguise itself as rot. "No warrior is spared," he said. Freya's eyes stayed on him. "No elder is spared. No child is spared from the rule, though children will not bear adult blame. No wounded body is spared because pain makes pity. No kin is spared. No friend is spared. No singer, seer, oar, maker, healer, guard, or chieftain is spared." He turned his palm toward his own chest. "I am not spared," Astrid said, "nor those you love." The words cut deeper because she did not name anyone. Ulfric looked at Freya then, only for a breath, long enough for the people to see, short enough not to turn her into an accusation. "Nor those I love," he said. Freya did not move. The old woman whose bowl had sunk said, "And if the law is wrong," Ulfric answered, "then I will carry that wrong openly, not hide it under kindness." "If a mother keeps a braid," another asked, "it is surrendered. If a child cries for it, the child is held, the braid is not. If gold is found in a dying man's mouth, named before all, taken from him, cast away under watch. If the man is your blood, then my blood learns first that law has teeth." Murmurs moved through them. Some approved because the law had not yet touched their hidden place. Some hated him because they could already feel it there. A father lifted a sleeping child higher against his chest. "If she keeps a doll made by her dead sister?" Ulfric looked at the child, then at the father. He wanted to ask what the doll was made from. He wanted to say that cloth could stay and bone could not. He wanted to make a small exception because the child's mouth was blue with cold, and because a father pleading for a toy did not look like greed. Astrid said nothing. That silence was worse than command. "It is named," Ulfric said. "It is shown. If Astrid judges it safe, it stays. If it draws the dead, it goes." The father's face folded around the answer. He nodded, but not with gratitude. A young warrior lifted his chin. "You cut the skiff away. You will cut anything." Ulfric faced him. "Yes." The answer was too plain for argument. "And if that makes you cruel?" "It already has." The warrior looked away first. Astrid came to Ulfric with the salt pouch. She pinched less than a pinch between her fingers. Even now, even for the oath, she spent little. "Open your mouth," she said. He obeyed. She set salt on his tongue. It was almost nothing. It burned like a blade. "Speak the vow with salt," she said. Ulfric swallowed. His throat worked against the taste. "I will enforce the salt rite without favor. I will burn the body when fire can be found. I will salt memory when salt remains. I will make names spoken before witnesses. I will refuse gold-hidden keepsakes that endanger the living and ropes that open doors to the dead. I will punish concealment, even when concealment calls itself love. I will not spare myself or those I love." A child began to cry, not loudly. The sound was small and tired, but it broke something in the group because the oath had reached children too. Freya stepped back and put a hand on the child's head. The crying did not stop. It steadied. Leif lowered his eyes to the oars. He did not write yet. He knew a word carved too soon could become pride. He waited for the oath to finish becoming burden. The old woman with the lost bowl stepped forward and touched Ulfric's sleeve. "I still hate you," she said. "I know. If I hide something, you will take it." "Yes. If you hide something, who takes it from you?" Ulfric looked over the people, then at Freya, then at Astrid, then at Leif. "All of you," he said. Astrid nodded once. That answer did not soften the oath. It made it worse. Law had become not only his weapon, but the clan's right against him. A chieftain who swore that gave away a piece of command. A desperate man who refused to swear it gave the dead every hidden pocket in the camp. Freya said, "If you fail, I will hold you to it." Ulfric looked at her. "If you fail, I will hold you to it." The words passed between them without heat and without mercy. Around them, people heard more than discipline. They heard the first crack between love and law. Astrid lifted the ash rag and pressed it to Ulfric's raised hand. "Witnessed." The survivors repeated the word. Not all together. Not strongly, but enough. Witnessed. The oath settled over the islet. It did not feel like rescue. It felt like another weather system arriving, one made by human mouths and meant to stand against hunger, gold, grief, and the hands beneath the keel. People looked at one another differently after it. A sleeve was no longer only a sleeve. A pouch was no longer only a pouch. A silence was no longer only tiredness. Mercy and law had been named in the same place. Everyone understood they would not always leave together. Freya was the first to enforce the oath. That was what made the hidden thing worse. The cold light before morning showed the islet without kindness. Stone ridges became sharper. The boats looked smaller than they had in the dark, and more damaged. The last boat still leaned where the frozen hands gripped the keel. Ice had thickened around the fingers. No one had cut them away. Astrid had said the hands would teach, and they did. Every person who passed the landing looked down and walked more carefully afterward. Freya moved through the camp with ash still on her palm. "Pouch is open," she said. No one liked hearing it from her. That was why she said it, instead of letting Ulfric begin. Ulfric's oath had made him the law's hand, but if every command came from him, people would turn the right into another chieftain's cruelty. Freya made it harder to pretend. She had cut the child free. She had held the rear boat. She had broken hands off the hull. If she searched a pouch, no one could say the law was only a man's cold speech. A young hunter handed over a strip of red cloth. "My sister's," he said before Freya asked. "Not gold, not bone, cloth only." "Name her before Astrid," Freya said. "Then keep it if Astrid allows it." He nodded. An elder surrendered a braid wrapped in leather. Freya took it gently, but she took it. The elder struck her shoulder with a closed fist. Freya let the blow land. A girl produced a little amber bead and cried until her nose ran. Amber was not gold, but it shone. Freya brought it to Astrid. Astrid held it, listened, and gave it back only after the girl named her grandmother and swore not to wear it near water. "Law is not blindness," Astrid said. "Nor softness," Freya answered, "nor stupidity." Freya almost smiled. Almost. Then she reached the packs salvaged from the second boat. They had been sorted in the dark: dry wool, wet wool, food, knife work, sailcloth, rope, things to burn, things to mend. One bundle had split open where salt water had stiffened the hide. Freya crouched to retie it and saw a glint between folds of cloth. Her hand stopped. It was small. Smaller than the first joint of her thumb. A golden brooch, bent at the pin, worked in the shape of a curled leaf or a sleeping bird. not rich enough for a jarl, too fine for a tool. It lay caught in the seam of a child's undercloak, as if hidden there in haste before the boats left the shore. Freya did not touch it at first. The law stood behind her in every voice from the night. Gold is refused. Hidden objects surrendered. The one who hides it has opened a door. She looked around. Ulfric stood near the landing with 2 men, arguing over whether the damaged boat could be dragged farther from the water without splitting. Leif sat with oars across his lap, rubbing ash into the grooves before carving deeper. Astrid listened to a woman speak the name of a drowned brother. Soren slept at last under a cloak too large for him, one hand clenched around empty cloth. Freya looked back at the brooch. She knew whose it might have been, or thought she did. Before the longhouse burned, she had seen a small girl named Ragnar wearing a gold leaf at her throat during winter feasts, proud because it had belonged to her mother and her mother's mother. Ragnar had died during the first nights of Rising, or perhaps she had not. So many small faces had become smoke, snow, or absence that memory now lied by kindness. The undercloak was child-sized. That was enough for grief to make a story. A useful woman would call Astrid. A loyal woman would call Ulfric. A wise woman would lift the bundle with the knife tip and name the gold before everyone. Freya was useful. Freya was loyal. Freya was not wise in the place where grief entered quietly. She picked up the brooch. At once she remembered a winter before the first dead stood. Ragnar had spun in the longhouse while older women laughed, the little gold leaf flashing at her throat each time she turned. Freya had told her to stop before she fell into the hearth. Ragnar had stopped, solemn for a breath, then laughed with her whole face because the world had still contained punishment small enough to survive. That memory came so warmly that Freya hated it. Warmth had become one of the ways danger disguised itself. It was cold, but not colder than the morning. It did not burn her. It did not whisper. It did not show a mark. That made the danger easier to lie about. One small thing, she thought, not wealth, not greed, not a hoard, not a coin that had come back from the sea, a child's memory, a mother's clasp. Something too small to call doom without sounding afraid of light itself. Her fingers closed around it. Freya! She turned. Soren was awake, watching her from under the cloak. For a moment, neither moved. His eyes dropped to her closed fist. What did you find? He asked. Freya's throat tightened. She could have lied to a warrior more easily than to him. A thorn in the cloth, she said. He looked at her face. Children who had lost too much learned the shape of lies quickly. Does it hurt? Yes, she said. That was true enough to be cruel. He nodded and lay back down. He did not believe her fully. He also did not have the strength to ask again. Freya opened her fist beneath the fold of her cloak. The brooch sat in her palm like a yellow eye, trying not to blink. She should have walked to Astrid. She should have woken the camp with her own guilt. She should have become the first proof that Ulfric's oath spared no one. Instead, she slipped the brooch into the inner seam of her leather guard, close beneath her left arm where a shield strap would hide the weight. The pin pricked her through cloth. She welcomed the pain because it made the act feel like a wound rather than theft. I will surrender it when the children are steadier, she whispered. No one answered. That was how private sin made room for itself, not with a shout, but with a promise shaped like delay. She stood and tied the split bundle shut. Her ash-marked hand looked clean enough from a distance. A man approached with a knife wrapped in cloth. Freya, is this to be named? She took it, inspected the handle, and found no gold, no bone, no hidden braid. Yes, she said. Name who carried it. Then ask Leif to cut the name into the oar if Astrid agrees. The man obeyed. Freya continued through the camp. She took dangerous keepsakes. She sent people to speak names. She cut trailing rope ends. She ordered a child away from the water. She upheld the law with such force that several people looked relieved to be afraid of her. All the while, the brooch lay hidden close to her ribs. When Ulfric passed her, he paused. "You are pale," he said. "So are the dead." "That is not an answer. It is the one I have." He studied her. She held his gaze because looking away would be confession. At last he nodded toward the camp. "They listen to you. They listen because I make disobedience harder than fear. That is useful. It is ugly. Most useful things are now." He moved on. Freya breathed only after he turned away. Beneath her arm, the small golden brooch seemed to gain weight from being unseen. The public vow still echoed across the islet. Refuse the gold. Hidden objects surrendered. No one spared. Freya walked through those words with the secret pressed close, and the sea below the stones knocked softly against the keel, as if something under the water had heard the difference between law and obedience. Leif waited until the oath had become work. That was the only way he trusted it. Words spoken in fear could rise like sparks and vanish. Words repeated by a crowd could make cowards feel brave for a breath. Words sworn by a chieftain could become another kind of hunger if no hand remembered them after the throat grew tired. Leif had praised raids once. He had learned that a well-made line could hide blood under rhythm. He would not let the salt rite become beautiful before it became useful. So he watched. He watched Freya search packs and send people to Astrid. He watched Ulfric help drag the last boat higher onto stone, though the frozen hands beneath the keel made the work slow and sickening. He watched Astrid spend salt like a woman spending the last warmth from her own body. He watched Soren sit awake and silent, refusing water until Freya placed the cup in his hands and ordered him to live. Only then did Leif take up the oars. They were not clean wood anymore. They were blackened by longhouse smoke, scraped by ice, darkened by fjord water, and marked by hands that had rowed through terror. Some already carried the shallow cuts he had made before the village burned: roof, wave, flame, path. Some had no marks yet. One had a crack near the blade. Another was missing a splinter where a dead hand had seized it under the ice. Leif set them in a row above the landing, not too near the water. He did not choose the finest oars first. He chose the ones most hands would touch. The cracked one for the rear boat, the heavy one for Ulfric's place, the short one children had helped pass from bench to bench, the oar whose old roof mark had darkened under Leif's palm during the song. If law was carved only into treasured wood, people would treat it as a holy thing and forget to obey it while rowing. It had to live where blisters formed. A child asked, "Will the words keep them away?" Leif looked at the keel. "No." The child frowned. "They may keep us from inviting them closer," he said. That answer did not please the child. Good, Leif thought. Pleasing answers had become dangerous. He began with the strongest oar. The knife moved poorly at first. His hand shook from cold and weariness. The wood resisted because wet wood always did. He carved slowly, deepening each cut enough for fingers to feel in darkness. Burn the body. He did not carve a whole sentence. Too much wood would be needed, too much time. He chose marks, each with words beside them where the blade allowed: flame for body, salt lines for memory, open mouth for name, broken ring for gold, refused, watching eye for rope, closed door for the dead not called. Astrid came to stand over him. "Do not make it pretty," she said. "I was trying not to." "Try harder." His mouth twitched despite the cold. You wound me. No, I prevent worse wounds. He carved the broken ring deeper. Will this hold? He asked. The wood? The law? Astrid lowered herself to the stone beside him. Only if hands hold it when mouths hate it. Leif looked toward Freya. She was tightening a rope around the second boat, face pale and hard. Then carving is not enough. No. Then why carve? Because hunger forgets. Grief edits. Fear invents exceptions. Wood is slower to lie. Leif accepted that and carved the next mark. Ulfric joined them after the boat was hauled higher. His forearm bled where rope had burned through skin. He did not ask for binding. He watched Leif's knife instead. Put my oath there, he said. Leif shook his head. Not all of it. All of it matters. All of it will split the blade. Ulfric almost argued. Then he saw the oar. Tool first, record second. Memory only if it did not break the thing that had to carry them. Then put the part that cuts, he said. Leif carved beneath the broken ring, without favor. The words looked harsher in wood than in air. People came as he worked. Not all at once. Work kept them moving. Hunger kept them sullen. Shame kept them careful. But one by one they stood near the oars and watched the law become something that would travel. The old woman named Irsa touched the salt line mark. The hunter with the red cloth touched the flame mark. The girl with the amber bead touched the watching eye and then stepped back from the shore. Freya came last. Leif saw the ash on her palm, the scratch on her cheek, the stiffness in her shoulders. He did not see the brooch. He saw only that she stood as if something small had lodged where armor could not stop it. Your hand, he said. She gave it. He turned her palm upward. You have ash. So do many. Yours keeps looking like blood. It has been a long night. He accepted the answer because he had no right to search under it. He set her hand on the oar and guided her fingers over the marks. Flame for body, he said. Salt for memory. Mouth for name. Broken ring for gold refused. Eye for rope watched. Door closed against calling the dead. Her fingers stopped on the broken ring. Only for a breath. Leif noticed the pause and thought of the skiff, the hoard, the old law of greed eating every good intention. He did not think of a brooch hidden under her arm. Deep enough? He asked. Yes, Freya said. Her voice was steady. Too steady, perhaps. But steadiness had become common among those near breaking. Astrid lifted her head. The sea had gone quiet. Quiet was no longer peace to any of them. Leif carved the last line into the final oar as the camp gathered close. The words were short enough for wood and hard enough for winter. Burn, salt, name, refuse, watch, do not call. Astrid placed the salt pouch beside the oars. It was nearly empty. Ulfric laid his hand over the carved oath. Freya laid hers beside his. Leif placed the knife between them, blade flat so it belonged to witness, not threat. Astrid spoke first. This law does not save us. The people knew the answer now. It teaches us where not to open. Ulfric said, no favor. The survivors answered, no favor. Freya said, no gold hidden. The answer came rougher, slower, but it came. No gold hidden, Leif said. No name called into water. Soren's lips moved. He did not speak aloud. Freya did not force him. The people answered, no name called into water. Astrid took ash and smeared it across the carved marks. Leif rubbed it in so the cuts darkened. Then she touched the last grains of salt to the oar blades, not enough to sanctify them, only enough to mark the cost. Carry it, she said. The rowers lifted the oars. For a moment the islet held still around them. Damaged boats lay on stone. The keel hands remained trapped beneath ice. Children watched from the ridge. The old stood with names in their mouths and no comfort in them. The public law had been spoken, salted, ashed, sworn and carved. Then drums answered from the sea. No one moved. The sound came once, low and far across the black water. Then again, not from the islet, not from the boats, not from any living craft they could see. The sea beyond the landing was empty under the cold light, broken only by ice plates and the dark lanes between them. The drums sounded again. Soren covered his ears. The old woman whispered Irsa's name and then stopped herself before it became a call. Ulfric reached for his axe. Freya's hand moved to the place beneath her arm, then away so quickly no one saw but the sea. Astrid stood with her blindfold turned toward the sound. "Do not answer," she said. The drums rolled over the empty water. Leif looked at the carved oars lying beside the dark shore, their fresh marks black with ash and bright with scarce salt. He had wanted the law to travel with them. Now the sea had heard it before they left. Across the empty sea, where no living boat could be seen, the drums kept time with the oath. Thank you for listening. This chapter ends here, but the story continues. Follow the series for new chapters, and when you are ready, explore the other worlds and storylines waiting beyond this one. If you enjoyed this episode, leaving a like or a comment helps more listeners find the story.